forward. But what I was able to do with the borough president of Brooklyn was introduce a bill that would force the city to actually sit down and take a year to come together and figure out what are the challenges the industry is seeing, what are the challenges that the city should get involved in, whether it be zoning, as you mentioned, whether it be creating incentives to help the industry deal with the cost. And I think at the end of the day, it's important for the city to get engaged at that level, because a lot of the concerns I hear from the industry is that they're not able to get seed funding, they're not able to get funding to help sustain their business. And investors are afraid to invest in this market, especially in New York City, because the city has not yet taken a leading role in recognizing the work that's being done here.
Yeah, I think that's quite accurate. You know, when we approached the Brooklyn Borough President's Office as a collective, we surveyed all of the members and said, what problems are we facing? And there were some really common ones that everyone was facing, which was really access to land and space, especially at the beginning stages, was really important. But after that, once you've kind of figured out your first operation, you actually need to get a big one, right? You need to scale up. That's what it's all about. And so to go from, say, 1,000 square foot to a 10,000 square foot space is extremely difficult in New York City. And the delays in permitting, the fact that the Department of Buildings doesn't understand a lot of what urban agriculture is. Some of them might think it's on the outside of buildings instead of inside of the buildings. And so there's a lot of interpretation of code that's needed. There's a lot of expedition that's needed as well, because the timing is so critical in a lot of these projects to get investment. You know, they'll back out. They won't support the project if you don't find that space. So those are some of the challenges. I think the other challenges are, you know, finding access to basic talent, I would say, the beginning talent, entry-level talent, because you have to spend a lot of money on training, on food safety. And so if the city had a training program that created, you know, a diverse skill set of urban agriculture, those people would be more equipped to get started in urban farms. And I think that would strengthen a lot of the businesses early on. Obviously, a lot of urban farms would be interested in some financial incentive for those jobs, because it's very difficult. It's very high operating costs, especially at the beginning, labor costs specifically. Other ones are just really about recognizing the value of local food. I think there's a lot of movement towards that now, but a lot of government institutions or a lot of markets themselves don't put local food first. And it's not just about the product and the quality of the product, but it's about the local economy. So I think creating more incentives, or rather more of a carrot to kind of get groups involved and excited about and promoting local agriculture from a top-down approach would really accelerate urban agriculture here.
One other thing that Henry and Rafael haven't covered is people in New York City and in urban areas often lack a connection to what they're eating and where it comes from. And I think that part of what could be done is spreading the idea that what you're eating is grown in the next street over, the next borough. And that's a really powerful thing. When people are connected with what they're eating, they tend to value it more, and they tend to appreciate the work and the effort that's gone into growing or producing whatever they're consuming. And I think that both New York City and perhaps some of the farms and incubators could work together to really spread those ideas and get people, especially young people, students and college students as well, involved and engaged in the community. Henry's done an incredible job in hosting events like this and Agtech Week, and more things like that would be terrific to spread the idea that we can grow food in our city and we can feed people in our city with farms in New York.
Some of the challenges, as Henry has seen firsthand, that people face when they're looking to sort of start a new urban ag project is not only do, you know, the Department of Buildings, they don't really know how to handle, you know, an application, but the zoning code itself is difficult to read. It's very long. It hasn't been updated since like 1962. The word urban agriculture doesn't exist, or the phrase. It's just, you know, it briefly talks about the fact that you can have, you know, raised truck beds and community gardens. Otherwise, it's very, very silent on what can and cannot be done. And just by the fact that there is no concrete information, people might not know that technically farming is allowed in a very, very limited sense in residential districts. It is allowed in commercial and industrial districts. So if you don't have access to this information, if that information is not sort of modernized and organized and readily accessible, it kind of discourages, future development and just kind of leaves people a little bit concerned as to how they can do, and it's particularly important and an issue on the sort of smaller individual scale for individual community residents who want to start their own smaller projects. Particularly in Councilman Espinal's district, that's something for individuals. You want them to have the resources, and they just don't have that as far as information is concerned. And then back to the larger scale situation, another thing that Henry has faced is that there isn't enough data. There's data that's kind of disorganized a little bit as far as where are the vacant spaces, how are these spaces utilized, where are the community gardens, is it legal to develop a new one? So the data is kind of available piecemeal, but what we need is a really well-organized, streamlined, centralized place for all the data to be readily accessible for everybody.